It started like any other evening, with the low hum of the TV in the background, and the soft clicking of my phone. But then, something unusual caught my eye. A text notification popped up from an unknown number, and before I could even think, my curiosity took the lead. It was a simple, casual message, something that seemed harmless at first. "I miss you, can't wait to see you again." The message wasn't addressed to me, and my heart sank. I tried to brush it off as nothing, but the thought lingered in my mind like an itch I couldn't scratch. The more I tried to push it away, the more persistent it became. Days passed, and my mind started to race. What if it wasn't just a casual fling? What if everything I thought I knew was a lie? As time went on, the signs grew clearer, and my suspicion turned into certainty. I began checking David's, 30 male Caucasian, social media, little by little, as I watched everything unravel in front of my eyes. The days that followed were a blur of constant unease. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had discovered. Every little interaction with David, 30 male Caucasian, felt like a lie. Was he really the person I thought he was? I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I felt like I was losing control of everything. The smallest things began to trigger my paranoia. A missed call, an awkward silence after he came back home late, a sudden text message that he quickly deleted. It all became too much. I needed to know more. So, I started digging. First, it was just a casual check of his social media. Then I went through his phone. My heart pounded as I read his conversations. It was happening. The affair I'd been denying in my mind was real, and with every new message, my world crumbled further. I was drowning in my own suspicions. The evidence kept piling up, each new discovery more painful than the last. I couldn't keep pretending it was all in my head. I needed answers, and I couldn't wait any longer. The next morning I confronted him. My voice was shaking as I asked him outright, "David, are you seeing someone else?" He froze, his eyes flickering with guilt, before he quickly masked it with anger. "What the hell are you talking about?" he snapped, but I could see the lie in his eyes. It was all unraveling, and he knew it. The silence that followed his denial spoke volumes. In that moment, I knew the truth. It was no longer just a suspicion. It was a painful, undeniable reality. The confrontation was nothing like I expected. David, 30, male Caucasian, denied everything, but his words were hollow. I saw the cracks in his facade, the way his voice trembled, the guilt in his eyes. "It's not what you think," he insisted, but it didn't matter anymore. I knew. The affair had destroyed everything. I couldn't stand there any longer, hearing him lie to my face. I needed to leave, to breathe, to think. But before I could even step away, his phone buzzed again, a message from her. The same woman I had seen in his messages. "I miss you," it read, a dagger to my heart. He tried to grab the phone from me, but I shoved it back in his hands, not wanting to touch it anymore. "You've lost me," I whispered before walking away, the tears flowing freely. After leaving the apartment, I found myself standing in front of my best friend, Janice, 29, female, Hispanic, house. I knocked, her face showing concern the moment she opened the door. Without a word, I collapsed into her arms. The tears that had been building up for days finally came crashing down. She didn't ask questions. She just held me. After a while, I finally managed to say, "I found out. He's been cheating on me." Her face softened with sympathy, but I could see the anger in her eyes, the same anger I felt. She pulled away, looking at me seriously. "What are you going to do now?" she asked, her voice quiet but full of intent. I didn't have the answers. All I knew was that I needed to heal, but the first step was confronting David and making him face the consequences of his actions. I couldn't stay in the same place anymore. The apartment that once felt like home now felt like a prison. I packed a bag and decided to spend a few nights at Jenna's. My mind kept replaying everything, every single moment that led to this heartbreak. How did I miss all the signs? The late-night work calls that I thought were innocent. The sudden changes in his routine. My heart ached with the thought that the person I trusted the most had been betraying me all along. I wanted to scream, but there was no one left to listen. I had to find the strength to face him again, to look him in the eye and demand the truth he'd been hiding for so long. The days spent at Jenna's house felt like a blur. I couldn't focus, couldn't even look at my phone without feeling nauseous. But then, the moment arrived. I had to confront David, 30, male Caucasian. I called him, my hands shaking as I dialed his number. When he picked up, I could barely speak. "We need to talk," I said, my voice trembling. He hesitated, and that hesitation made my heart sink. He knew what was coming. About what? His voice was defensive, but there was a hint of fear in it. I knew that he could no longer deny it. He had to face the consequences. "You know exactly what I'm talking about." The silence on the other end was unbearable. I met David, 30, male, Caucasian, in the park. His face looked different, almost defeated, as if he knew the game was up. "I didn't want to hurt you," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I wanted to scream at him, to throw every accusation at him, but I stayed quiet. I needed the truth, the unfiltered, brutal truth. "Who is she?" I asked, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. David, 30, male Caucasian, sighed, looking away. For a moment I thought he wouldn't answer. Then finally he said, "It's Rachel." I felt my world collapse. My best friend. And the one person I trusted to be there for me. How could she? How could both of them betray me so completely? The days after the confrontation were unbearable. I tried to process the truth, but it didn't make sense. Rachel, 29, female Caucasian, my best friend, my confidant, the person I trusted above all others, had been sleeping with my boyfriend. I felt like my entire world had shattered. I wanted to scream, to yell at her, but I didn't know how to face her. I tried to keep busy, tried to avoid the pain by drowning myself in work. But every time I saw Rachel's face, every time I heard her name, it was like a dagger in my chest. She tried to contact me, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. What could I even say? I was too broken to speak to her. How could she betray me like this? I knew I couldn't avoid Rachel, 29, female Caucasian, forever. She kept reaching out, and eventually, I agreed to meet. The moment we saw each other, it felt like everything stopped. She was nervous, her eyes pleading for some kind of forgiveness. But there was no way I could forgive her, not yet. "How could you do this to me?" I asked, my voice shaking with anger. She looked down, ashamed. "I'm sorry, Samantha," she whispered. "I never meant for it to happen." Her words felt empty, and I realized that nothing she said could undo the damage. The pain in my chest only grew. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she got caught. I had no choice but to walk away. I wasn't sure if I could ever rebuild this friendship. I wasn't even sure I wanted to. It had been a week since the confrontation with Rachel, 29, female Caucasian, and I still couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. It wasn't just the affair that hurt, but the fact that she was my best friend. She knew everything about me, my fears, my weaknesses, my dreams, and she still chose to hurt me. David, 30, male Caucasian, tried to apologize, but his words felt hollow, empty. He kept asking me to forgive him, to give him another chance. But how could I? How could I ever trust him again? Every time he touched me, all I could think of was Rachel. I wasn't sure if I was ready to move on, but I knew I had to. I had to take back control of my life. Rachel, 29, female Caucasian, finally stopped trying to contact me. I knew she was hurt, but I wasn't sure if I could forgive her. The truth was, I wasn't sure if I even wanted to. She had destroyed our friendship in a single moment, and now I was left with the pieces. I tried to keep my distance, but it was hard to forget the years of shared memories, the laughter, the secrets. I missed her, but the betrayal cut too deep. David, 30, male Caucasian, kept coming around, but each time I saw him, the pain grew. It wasn't just the affair that tore me apart. It was the lies, the manipulation, the deceit. I couldn't be with someone who didn't value me. I began to realize that the only person I needed to forgive was myself. I had been blinded by love, trust, and hope. I had ignored the warning signs, told myself everything was fine, when deep down I knew something wasn't right. It wasn't just David, 30, male, Caucasian, and Rachel, 29, female, Caucasian, who were to blame. It was also me. I had let myself become too dependent on them. I let them become my entire world, and in doing so, I lost sight of who I really was. I wasn't just a woman in a broken relationship. I was someone who had the strength to move on, to rebuild, to find happiness again. I wasn't going to let them destroy me. I began to focus on myself again. It wasn't easy, but I started small. I took long walks, rediscovered my love for painting, and reconnected with old friends. I had been so wrapped up in my relationship with David, 30, male Caucasian, and my friendship with Rachel, 29, female Caucasian, that I had forgotten the things that made me happy. Slowly, I began to heal. It was a long process, and some days were harder than others, but I knew I had to let go of the past in order to move forward. I didn't need anyone else to define who I was. I was stronger than I realized. The day came when I finally faced David, 30, male, Caucasian, one last time. He came to my apartment, and this time, there was no anger, no tears, just a cold, painful clarity. He apologized again, but I didn't need his apologies anymore. "You betrayed me," I said, my voice calm. But the person who hurt me the most was me. I had to let go of my need for closure, my need for an apology that would never come. I had already given him too many chances, and now it was time for me to take my own life back. "I'm done," I told him. There was no bitterness, no anger, just the finality of someone who had learned to let go. Weeks passed since I'd broken up with David, 30, male Caucasian, and I found myself in a place I hadn't expected. I wasn't devastated or lost. In fact, I felt a sense of clarity that I hadn't experienced in a long time. The pain had subsided, replaced by a quiet strength. I had finally accepted what had happened, not just the affair, but the deeper betrayal of my own self-worth. It wasn't about what David, 30, male Caucasian, did anymore. It was about how I had allowed myself to be blinded by love and comfort. I had allowed myself to lose sight of who I was. But I was regaining that sense of self. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight, but I was slowly starting to heal. It was time to put myself first. As time passed, I noticed something unexpected. I was actually starting to enjoy being alone. I had always been afraid of solitude, believing that it meant loneliness. But now, I was rediscovering parts of myself I had long neglected. I started focusing more on my career, picking up hobbies that once brought me joy, and reconnecting with friends I hadn't seen in years. The quiet moments, the ones where I wasn't thinking about David, 30, male, Caucasian, or Rachel, 29, female Caucasian, became the most fulfilling. I wasn't searching for a relationship to complete me, I was learning to complete myself. The journey of self-love was harder than I'd imagined, but I was beginning to understand its importance. It wasn't long before I had to confront the idea of moving on. It wasn't about forgiving David, 30, male, Caucasian, or Rachel, 29, female Caucasian. It was about letting go of the past. I found myself thinking about love again, but this time, not in the way I had before. I wasn't looking for someone to save me, someone to fill the empty spaces I had once let others occupy. I was beginning to realize that love, real love, wasn't about needing someone. It was about wanting them, about standing beside someone, not leaning on them. I wasn't there yet, but I could see it now. I could see the possibility of a future where love wasn't a source of pain, but a source of joy. I saw Rachel, 29, female Caucasian, again, finally. It wasn't the angry confrontation I had expected. Instead, we sat down for coffee in a quiet cafe, just the two of us. There was no bitterness, no blame. I had moved past it. Rachel, 29, female Caucasian, had changed, or at least that's how it felt. She had apologized, but I realized I no longer needed her apology. I had forgiven her a long time ago, not for her, but for me. I needed to release the anger and resentment I had been holding on to. We talked, laughed even, but it was different now. I wasn't the same person who had been betrayed. I had grown. And so had she. We didn't pick up where we left off, but we didn't need to. Our friendship, if it was ever meant to be, was over. And that was okay. It was a month later when I bumped into David, 30, male, Caucasian, again, unexpectedly. The encounter was nothing like the first time we met, after everything fell apart. There was no lingering pain, no bitterness, just two people who had once meant the world to each other. We spoke briefly, acknowledging the past without dwelling on it. "I hope you're okay," he said, his voice carrying the weight of regret. "I am," I replied, my voice steady. It wasn't a lie. I was okay. I was better than okay. I was strong. Stronger than I ever thought I could be. And I realized something in that moment. I didn't need David, 30, male, Caucasian, to complete me anymore. I was complete on my own. I spent the next few weeks focusing on myself, really taking the time to heal. I was no longer in a rush to find love or validation from others. Instead, I wanted to build a life that was strong on its own. I spent more time with friends, reconnected with old hobbies, and even started therapy to unpack some of the emotional baggage I'd been carrying for years. There were days when I still missed the idea of David, 30, male, Caucasian, and the life we could have had, but I didn't let those thoughts consume me anymore. I accepted them, acknowledged the pain, and let them pass. It wasn't about erasing the past. It was about embracing a future I could own. I met someone new. His name was Daniel, 32, male, Hispanic, and he was nothing like David, 30, male, Caucasian. There was no overwhelming chemistry at first, no firework moments, but something about him was steady and kind. I wasn't looking for anything, but sometimes life offers things when you least expect it. Daniel, 32, male, Hispanic, was patient, understanding, and he never pressured me. We would talk for hours, and I found myself laughing again, something I thought I had forgotten how to do. Slowly, I realized that I wasn't afraid of getting close to someone anymore. The wounds from my past weren't scars I needed to hide. They were a part of me, but they didn't define me. A few months passed, and the relationship with Daniel, 32, male, Hispanic, started to grow into something more meaningful. I no longer had the weight of my past relationship dragging me down. I could enjoy the moments without comparing everything to what had been. There were still moments where I doubted myself, wondering if I was truly ready to give my heart again. But Daniel, 32, male, Hispanic, was patient with me. I realized that love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone who was right for me, flaws and all. And I wasn't perfect, but I was willing to try again. I started to realize that the love I was looking for wasn't about a grand romance or a sweeping gesture. It was about finding someone who could accept me for all that I was, someone who saw me, really saw me, and still chose to be with me. Daniel, 32, male, Hispanic, didn't try to fix me or change me. He just let me be. That was the first time I truly understood that love wasn't about perfection. It was about acceptance, vulnerability, and trust. And for the first time in a long time, I trusted someone again. I trusted myself too. One evening, while walking with Daniel, 32, male, Hispanic, I received a message from David, 30, male, Caucasian. My heart raced at the sudden appearance of his name, but I didn't let it take me by surprise. I had moved on. I had built a life beyond what David, 30, male, Caucasian, and I had. I opened the message, and all it said was, "I'm sorry for everything. I wish you the best." I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pain. All I felt was a quiet sense of finality. I had let go of the past, and now the past was letting go of me. I smiled and tucked my phone away, turning to Daniel, 32, male, Hispanic, who smiled back. I was finally free. It's been a year since the day I uncovered the truth. I never imagined that I'd be here, living a life full of hope and new beginnings. I never wanted to be someone who let the past define them. And yet, I had for so long. The betrayal, the hurt, the unanswered questions, they were all shadows in the background, but they no longer controlled me. I realized that healing wasn't about erasing those memories. It was about learning to live alongside them. They didn't have to haunt me anymore. Instead, I could let them shape me into someone stronger. Daniel, 32, male, Hispanic, and I have been through a lot together in the past year. We've had our share of ups and downs, but what stands out most is the way we've both learned to trust again. I had to learn how to let go of my insecurities and let him in completely. And Daniel, 32, male, Hispanic, had to understand that healing takes time and patience. We're not perfect, but we've built something real. Something that's grounded in respect, honesty, and a love that feels effortless in its authenticity. It wasn't easy to trust again, but with time, I realized that love wasn't about avoiding pain. It was about letting yourself be vulnerable and believing that, despite everything, you're worthy of love. I had spent so many years questioning my worth, thinking that I wasn't enough, but now I knew that I was. Daniel, 32, male, Hispanic, taught me that the right kind of love doesn't come with conditions. It's a love that lifts you up, that gives you room to grow, and doesn't try to change who you are. I sometimes think back to the moments when I was lost in that world of uncertainty and hurt. The moments when I thought I would never feel whole again. But now, I look at where I am, and I know I've come so far. I've learned to be okay with myself, even when the world around me is chaotic. My life is no longer centered around one person or one event. It's mine, and I get to choose how to live it. Daniel, 32, male, Hispanic, and I are walking a path together, but I know that my journey was never about him. It was about me. I've learned that moving on doesn't mean forgetting, it means growing. It means seeing the lessons in the pain and using them to shape a better future. I've learned to let go of the need for answers and instead embrace the mystery of life. Not everything has a reason, and that's okay. I don't need all the pieces to feel complete anymore. What matters now is the life I'm building, the one I've earned by choosing to heal. The first time I stood in front of the mirror after everything had happened, I barely recognized myself. The woman staring back at me was different. There was an emptiness in her eyes, a reflection of the hurt I had endured. But as time passed, that emptiness began to fill with something else. Strength. Slowly, I started to see the person I was becoming. I had spent years questioning my worth, blaming myself for someone else's choices, but in that moment, I realized something important. I wasn't broken, I was evolving. I was learning to embrace all that I was. The scars, the pain, the lessons, and the triumphs. I was no longer afraid of my own reflection. I was proud of who I had become. Daniel, 32, male, Hispanic, and I have been walking this road together for some time now. Our connection is real, and it's strong. But I've learned that the love isn't about erasing the past. It's about understanding it, growing from it, and allowing it to shape you into a stronger, better person. With Daniel, 32, male, Hispanic, I don't have to hide my scars. He doesn't try to fix me. He accepts me as I am, flaws and all. That acceptance is something I never thought I would find. He has his own past, his own scars, and I've come to understand that we don't have to be perfect to love each other. We just have to be real. I used to think that healing meant forgetting, pushing the past far away, locking it up in a box and never opening it again. But now I know that healing is about embracing the past without letting it control you. It's about acknowledging the pain, learning from it, and then choosing to move forward. I'm not the same person I was a year ago. I'm stronger, more self-aware, and more compassionate. I've forgiven myself, and now I'm learning to forgive others, including those who hurt me. I don't need revenge or closure anymore. I found peace in letting go of the need to control the outcome. I've learned that sometimes the best thing you can do is trust life to unfold on its own terms. There's a part of me that still feels the sting of betrayal, and maybe I always will. But that sting no longer defines me. It's just a reminder. A reminder that I have the power to choose how I respond to life's challenges. I've learned to embrace my vulnerabilities, and in doing so, I've become stronger. I no longer fear the possibility of loss. Instead, I've learned to appreciate every moment, every connection, and every lesson along the way. I've learned that it's okay to be afraid, but it's also important to trust in yourself. No one else will ever have the power to define who I am. I am the author of my own story, and I choose to write a story of hope, resilience, and endless possibilities. And as I look forward now, I see endless possibilities. Not because I have it all figured out, but because I've learned that the only thing that truly matters is the present. I found peace in knowing that love doesn't have to be perfect, and neither does life. There's beauty in the imperfections, the moments of vulnerability, and the lessons learned through hardship. I've realized that the real victory is not in getting everything you want, but in finding peace with what you have. In the end, it's not about revenge, not about closure. It's about accepting yourself, embracing your own journey, and choosing to move forward. I'm ready for whatever comes next, knowing that I can handle it, because I've learned how strong I am.